So it now comes out what we've long suspected, that the FBI investigation into Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh was hopelessly politicized and compromised by the White House. This is shocking, although not surprising. Let's talk about it in today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. If you share my concerns, maybe you could like this video and subscribe to this channel, and maybe even click that little bell that will notify you when I post a new video. So while this nomination was pending, I wrote repeated articles in Medium about it, excoriating the FBI, the White House, and Brett Kavanaugh personally for their behavior through this process. I'll post links to these articles down below, as well as articles relevant to the most recent revelations we just found out about. But the key takeaways from the recent revelations are this. There was a recent letter sent in response to an inquiry made by Democratic senators 2 years ago, back when Trump was still president, of course. And now the assistant director of the FBI finally sends a letter in response, of course, now that there's a new administration in office, answering the questions that the senators had. Now, at issue was the fact that the FBI had conducted a background investigation of Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. Brett Kavanaugh now is a justice on the Supreme Court, and as such, he's shown himself to be as political as we expected. I mean, this is a guy whose background is completely political, and since he's been on the Supreme Court, he's only continued in that vein. In fact, Justice Elena Kagan has repeatedly called him out for taking inconsistent and blatantly political positions in his role as a Supreme Court justice. One might say that the Supreme Court is not a place for politics, but, well, we'll talk more about that later. Any rate, at one point, Brett Kavanaugh's nomination appeared to be in serious trouble. As many of us recall, Dr. Blasey Ford, a respected scholar who knew Brett Kavanaugh during high school, accused him of raping her back then. Blasey Ford was extremely credible, even according to Donald Trump, and there was other evidence that backed up her testimony. As I wrote back then, I believe Blasey Ford. And what's more is I believe that there was sufficient evidence against Brett Kavanaugh that were this a criminal trial, he actually would have been found guilty. But it's important to note, and we seem to forget this sometimes, especially when conservatives are the nominees who engage in sexual harassment, nobody has a right to join the Supreme Court. Joining the Supreme Court is a privilege, and as such, the burden should not be beyond all reasonable doubt the way it is in a criminal trial. The burden should be, is this someone who's above reproach, and as a result, we can trust to be on the highest judicial body in the United States? And in Brett Kavanaugh's case, the answer to that was clearly no. But that's all water under the bridge now, because he now has a lifetime appointment on the Supreme Court, and he's voting to overturn women's rights repeatedly. I don't know why anybody would have expected him to do otherwise, considering his background. But back while all this controversy was occurring, Jeff Flake, then a Republican U.S. Senator from Arizona, said he would not vote for the nomination unless there was a more thorough FBI investigation into the allegations against Brett Kavanaugh. The FBI claimed it engaged in such an investigation, although there was evidence even at the time that this investigation was severely hampered by interference from the White House. At any rate, after the quote-unquote investigation was complete, Republicans claimed that Kavanaugh was exonerated and there was no evidence to back up Dr. Ford's allegations. Well, now it turns out that the FBI investigation was even more of a farce than we thought it was. Apparently, the FBI set up a tip line, and they received 4,500 tips from across the country. And how many of those tips did they follow up on? Not a single one. What did they do with those tips? They turned them over to the White House, who are desperately trying to block the release of any information that could be further damaging to Brett Kavanaugh's nomination. So even though Jeff Flake said that he would not vote for the nomination unless there was an FBI investigation, this was just a fig leaf to allow him to ultimately vote for the nomination, which frankly, without his vote, would not have gone through. So why does this still matter now, aside from making me angry all over again about something that infuriated me at the time? Well, first of all, we still have Wray as the FBI director. He was the FBI director at the time, and he was directly involved in this sham of an investigation. Wray, of course, was a classmate of Brett Kavanaugh's at Yale and a fellow member of the Conservative Federalist Society. So it suddenly raises questions when you ask if he's somebody who will put the law over politics. Well, it turns out it's pretty clear he put politics over the law when Trump was in office. And he's not somebody Joe Biden can trust in such an important position. In fact, at one point, when Chris Wray was called before Congress and these questions were originally raised, he testified that the FBI's actions at the time were, quote, consistent with our long-standing policies, practices, and procedures for background investigations. Well, now, more than 2 years later, we find out that that was not the case, that he specifically lied to Congress to help the Trump administration cover over this sham of an investigation. As Assistant FBI Director Jill Tyson admitted in the letter that she sent to Congress just a few days ago, again, as she admitted in the letter, a very late response more than 2 years after the question was originally asked, she admitted that setting up a tip line was not something that had been done previously by the FBI in the case of a judicial nomination. As a result, Chris Wray's testimony that the actions were consistent with the long-standing policies, practices, and procedures for background investigations was a blatant lie aimed at covering over this sham of investigation. Again, it makes you wonder if Chris Wray is somebody who can be trusted with the immense power of the Department of Justice. The second point that's worthy of note is there's still a debate as to what Democrats need to do about the Supreme Court. Despite the fact that Democrats have repeatedly won the White House, and in fact won the popular vote in almost all of the last 5 presidential races, in some cases by significant margins, the Supreme Court now weighs 6-3 against progressives. At least one of those nominations was blatantly stolen from President Obama. That's the nomination of now Attorney General Merrick Garland. But what's more is that they cynically approved the nomination of Justice Amy Coney Barrett just days before the election was going to be held, despite the fact that they claimed that was the reason they could not even hold a hearing on Merrick Garland's nomination. What's worse is at least 2 of the Republican members of the Supreme Court are credibly accused sexual predators. And these are the people we have voting on women's rights. Well, these most recent revelations demonstrate once again that the Supreme Court has become hopelessly politicized and that it no longer deserves to have the privileged position in society that it has, where we essentially allow it to be the final arbiter on issues before the country. No longer is it due the deference that we've granted the Supreme Court in the past that has allowed it to have lifetime appointments, a limit of 9 justices, and the final say as to whether legislation is constitutional or not. In essence, this shows that the Supreme Court does not have credibility anymore. This is important because President Biden has established a commission to look at what options Democrats have for addressing the partisan imbalance of the court. Any sense that we need to have specific respect for tradition with the court is really out the window when it shows how hopelessly politicized it's become, and this is clear evidence of that fact. Well, if you agree with me or disagree with me, I'd love to hear your comments down below, and if you could give me a like and subscribe to this channel, that'd be a huge help. I'll see you in the next video, and in the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.